Welcome to Sweet Onion Kitchen. It's fall and that means it's baking season. So today we're going to make an apple galette. It's kind of like an apple pie, but it's a little easier and it looks a little fancier. So obviously our key ingredients today is we have our apples, specifically Granny Smith apples. I like them to be very tart because when we add the sugar and the cinnamon, they'll mellow out and they'll just mix really well inside of the pastry. We have pre-made pastry dough. You can make your own, but I mean, let's be honest, we're all working 9 to 5, so we don't have a ton of time, and it gets the same job done. We have our brown sugar and our spices, and that's going to be the main ingredients for our galette. So we're going to start by cutting our apples into 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch. I've already cut our apples here, so I'm going to finish cutting those, and then we'll get going. You'll notice I've left the skins on. Personally, I think that's because when I pre-cook the apples, as you'll see in a second, it makes the skin nice and tender and we don't have to worry about it becoming too harsh or too chewy. That's more of just a preference. If you prefer to peel your apples, go ahead and peel them at this stage. The next step is we're going to add all of our ingredients to this bowl. You can skip this step and just add everything on the stovetop once it's already cooking, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and add everything. We're going to start with 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar. You can do anywhere from 1/4 to about 1/2 of a cup, depending on how sour your apples are, or what kind of apples you're using, or just how sweet you like your tart. Personally, I like it a little less sweet, so I'm only going to use 1/4 of a cup today. Make sure that's nice and packed down, and we'll just add that to our bowl. The next thing we're going to add is our spices. I've got our cinnamon and our nutmeg here today. You can also add cloves, allspice. I mean, honestly, you can add whatever you want to this. I'm going to do about 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. Of course, you could always add more if you want, especially when it comes to baking kind of sweet desserts like this. The spices, you can kind of go wild. And for the cinnamon, I'm going to add about 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. To finish off our flavor, I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla extract. Vanilla extract is essential when you're making baked goods and pastries. We're going to do about 1/4 of a teaspoon. We're going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. That might seem counterintuitive when we're making a sweet dessert, but the salt actually enhances the sweetness. We don't want to add too much, just a little bit. And finally, to make sure our filling isn't runny, we're going to add about 1 tablespoon of flour. This we can get a better feel for once it's in the pan and cooking. We can always add more flour if we need to. We want to make sure that our juices are nice and thick and they don't run out of our pastry. At this stage, we don't have to mix it too terribly well. We just want to make sure that most of the apples and the powders are incorporated so nothing burns when it's on the stove. I did want to make a note, we are also supposed to add some lemon juice. I added the lemon juice earlier so our apples wouldn't turn brown before filming. But this is the stage where you would also add about 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. You should do that to taste though. We're going to cook our apples on the stove over about medium heat. You want to watch your apples and stir them occasionally. What we're looking for is we're basically going to candy our apples in a way. I like to pre-cook my apple filling over the stove for a few reasons. One, it gives me more control over how the filling tastes because I can taste it as it cooks throughout the process. Two, I think it helps the ingredients kind of meld together a little better. Personally, I think when you have it in the oven, it doesn't incorporate and caramelize as well as it could, and I think the extra time is worth it. But of course, if cooking's not really your thing and you'd prefer to get this done as fast as possible, feel free to go ahead and add your apples into your crust and bake it in the oven. This is about the softness we're looking for. The apples can still hold their shape a little bit, but they're nice and soft and they're not fibery or cardboardy anymore. It's at this point we can take it off the heat and put it into our dough. I will say I did have to add a little bit of water. I thought the apples would release a little more juice than they did. So if you find that there's not a lot of sauce at the bottom, just add a spoonful of water at a time until there's enough liquid to cover the apples and help them cook a little better. Now that our apples are fully cooked, we're going to go ahead and pour them onto our prepared pastry. You want to aim for the center and leave about 1 inch around, so we're going to fold up the dough later. Another reason I like to pre-cook my filling is, as you'll see when we wrap up the sides, if I didn't pre-cook it and there was a lot of liquid in there, the galette will actually slowly expand and get bigger, and sometimes it can break because there's too much liquid in there. So this just ensures that it's going to maintain its shape. We're at the last steps of making our galette. The last part we're going to do is we're just going to fold up our sides a little bit. It doesn't have to be pretty. Trust me, it's going to look good once it's baked. If you want to just kind of fold over the edges, we're just going to pat it down just to make sure that the pastry sticks to itself. This last step is optional, but it makes the pastry look better, and personally, when something looks better, we think it tastes better. We're going to put an egg wash around the outside of the pastry, which is going to help it make a nice golden brown color while it's in the oven. An egg wash is really simple. We just take one egg, we mix in about a tablespoon or two of water just to thin it out and make sure that it's easy to spread on the pastry, and then using a pastry brush, we're just going to brush it on there. If you have extra egg wash, all you can do is just freeze it for the next time. You can also put the egg wash on top of the apples. It'll make it look beautiful and glazed and kind of like that crystalline texture. When the outside is liberally coated, that's when you know you've got enough egg wash on there. And don't worry about any excess, it'll just cook off. It's at this point, if you want to add any sugar crystals to the top or any large flakes of salt, the egg wash will help it stick and it'll be nice and beautiful. But personally, I think it looks good without it. So we're going to go ahead and bake it at a 350 oven for about 30 minutes. A quick note, I did end up putting it in for 10 minutes longer at 400 to help brown it a little bit, just based on my personal oven. You can keep baking it as long or as little as you want. What you're looking for is a nice golden brown crust. And finally, our galette is done. We've let it cool for about 10 minutes so that it'll retain its form, and it's ready for us to cut in and try. This is just gorgeous. This would go really good with some vanilla ice cream or whipped cream, but I'm just going to eat it plain while it's still warm. These apples are perfectly cooked. It tastes so much like fall with all of that nutmeg and cinnamon. And the apples, because we pre-cooked them, all the flavor is just so thoroughly incorporated within the filling. Highly recommend this one. This is a fantastic recipe to bring to your next fall gathering. Not only does it look gorgeous, but it tastes gorgeous. And it goes really good with some ice cream. Hope you guys like this recipe, and I'll see you next time on Sweet Onion Kitchen.